Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Naim Abou-Jaoude. I'm the CEO of Candriam, which is part of New York Life Investment. Candriam stands for Conviction and Responsibility in Asset Management. We have been providing sustainable and responsible investing for more than 25 years. I'm delighted to be here today to share some ideas to support our collective efforts towards green, growing, and inclusive economy. My presentation to you today is going to be structured around four key elements. First, we will go through a quick overview of the current situation. Second, we will focus on the many positive signs and actions that have already started to flourish. We will then tackle together the importance of a just transition and the role of public and private finance. And finally, we will insist on the fact that this is a collective responsibility, and we will try to share some new proposals for building back better. First, let us take a step back 35 years ago in 1987, when the UN wrote about the concept of sustainable development within the Brundtland Report. At the time, we recognized the existence of environmental limits to the economic growth. The Brundtland Report also claims that poverty reduces sustainability and accelerates environmental pressures. And therefore, we needed to find balance between economy and ecology. Let's be honest, we haven't been able to properly address the big disruptions humanity is facing. At the governance level, we have seen significant rise in populism over the last 10 years. Social inequalities have never been so important. Environment, all this is amplified by global threat, climate change. We now end up where we are today in a situation that is worse than 35 years ago, and with much less time to act. Some of you may say, we already know this. And if you are like me, you are tired of being reminded every single day that the situation is terrible. But I remain a true optimist. So let's take a look together at the positives. The COVID crisis has shocked the world, causing a tragic number of deaths and leading to economic hardship not seen in many generations. But there is a silver lining to any crisis, and in my opinion, the silver lining of this one is that is a real wake-up call for all of us. We needed a catalyst, we have it now. Today, stars are aligned as we are witnessing a convergence of interest between the three pillars of our society. People who are saying today, never again. Governments who have provided a prompt response to the crisis with rescue packages at scale. They are empowered by the people to move and act fast. Businesses and the financial community who have a critical role to play to finance and enable innovation and change needed. With the pandemic, sustainability has clearly moved to the top of the global agenda. More than 110 countries have committed to becoming carbon neutral by 2050, of which the EU, the UK, Japan, and China as well has committed to do the same by 2060. This represents more than 65% of global CO2 emissions today. Companies are accelerating the integration of sustainability into their operations in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. over 1,000 companies representing 20% of global market capitalizations, more than 20 trillion, have committed to cut emissions at scale with science-based targets. Public bodies and regulators are moving in the same direction with the Green Deal in Europe, the EU taxonomy, and the UK 10-point plan for a green recovery. Moreover, organizations such as GRI, SASB, TCFD are collaborating to harmonize a common reporting framework. In addition, IFRS is launching a sustainability standard board to improve global sustainability reporting. This could be another breakthrough. Last but not least, the investment industry is increasing its attention and action on climate change and more generally on ESG issues at all levels. If we take one moment to look at the facts, overall ESG investments have doubled since 2016 and are now exceeding 40 trillion globally, with a strong acceleration in 2020. I have spent my entire career in asset management industry, and if I look back 25 years ago, when we first started talking about ESG, and even 10 years ago, clients didn't even know what ESG was. But today, all our institutional clients are asking for advice on ESG. Now, this is all very positive, but two important questions remain. One, are we moving fast enough? Two, how are we going to manage the social consequences of this acceleration? The pandemic has further exacerbated the global disruptions on the social and environmental level. It has highlighted that the E and the S are interdependent, and we cannot address one without the other. It is also clear to all of us that the consequences of climate change will be many times worse than what we are going through today. At this very moment, we are at the crucial point. We need to accelerate much more towards a green and growing economy, but this change must be inclusive, where no one is left behind. In another word, we must ensure a just and fair transition. As we accelerate towards climate action, the social cost of our actions has the potential to be significant. Let me take an example. Globally, 1.5 billion workers are directly employed in sectors critical to climate stability. 1.5 billion. The EU has planned to decarbonize the European economy and achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. This objective will require a massive reallocation of resources from carbon-intensive to low-carbon activities. This industrial shift will make millions of jobs obsolete, while others will be in high demand. Very concretely, moving towards a 100% renewable energy system by 2050 could create 52 million full-time jobs, but cause the loss of 27 million jobs within the traditional energy sector. We clearly see here that managing the social impact of positive climate action is a central challenge in the energy transition. This means that we must systematically evaluate the impact of any climate-related decision on society. But now, let us tackle the most important question. How? How can we act in order to achieve this? We need huge investments into greening the economy, including environmental projects such as infrastructure and alternative energy. This will support the creation of jobs and reduce inequalities. On the other hand, we also need investments into social projects, notably in order to train, educate, reskill the workers who are impacted by the loss of the CO2 intensive jobs. Now, how do we achieve this? If we start with the role of government, one thing is clear: we need their full support to help us advance our efforts. For instance, we need political action to implement a carbon pricing system, a carbon tax for the biggest polluters, and incentives for cleaner energy. I know this has been on the table for a while, but this initiative is so critical. Carbon pricing can create a new source of capital that we will be able to reinvest not only into greening our existing infrastructures, but also into social projects such as education, training, that will help transform the skills of workers. Europe's ambition to reach carbon neutrality by 2050 has strengthened the case for a wider application of carbon pricing. Carbon pricing is an obvious choice, but there are also many other ways governments can act now. They can provide a fiscal advantage to investors as an incentive to channel assets into green and inclusive projects. They can incentivize insurance and pension funds by reducing their capital requirement for long-term investments going into environmental and social projects. But of course, we can't sit back and wait for governments to act. As capital allocators, the private sector and finance industry have a core role to play supporting the just transition. Our role is to link the long-term interest of investors to those of society. This is an essential principle of responsible investment, which is central to the creation of long-term value. I'm going to share 5 areas on which I believe finance can focus on. 1, channeling capital. 2, integrating risk. 3, innovative products. 4, engagement. And 5, education. Let me start with the first one, accelerating change by channeling more capital into the projects that will facilitate a green and fair transition. If we are a true believer that ESG will be the key element of companies' valuation in the future, then the sustainable companies will benefit the most from the ongoing transformation. Therefore, investing into companies that are embedding ESG and having an impact on the economy is the best choice. For us at Candriam, this is a core belief. Second, we have the financial industry to fully integrate climate and social risk and opportunities into the financial system as a whole. This is absolutely crucial. The investment industry can no longer ignore those risks and their long-term impact. Here, regulation is moving into the right direction, at least in Europe, where listed companies have the obligation to report on climate-related risks. Third, we have to continue developing innovative financial instruments that have direct or indirect impact on environmental and social issues, such as the green bond, social bonds. As you can see on the slide, the ESG bond market had a record year of issuance at 500 billion in 2020 and reached 1.4 trillion last December. Fourth, a core part of the role of active managers is to use our powerful position as capital allocators to engage strongly. Engage strongly both as a company and collectively with peers. When a corporate receives an engagement letter signed by 20 or 30% of their market value, the CEO and the board will listen. Definitely will listen. The pandemic has provided asset managers with the opportunity to remind companies that they need to address the social issues across all levels. The social topic is not new to us and to our clients. We have been integrating materiality aspect on the S in our ESG analysis for a long time. In the last few years, we have concentrated our engagement on three core topics: energy transition, fair work conditions, and business ethics. Last year, we published a comprehensive paper on the just transition in the energy sector, highlighting the steps companies should take to address social issues and increase transparency for investors. Another important element of engagement is to identify sector champions to help encourage other companies to take action. Companies can learn from each other and share ideas. For example, SSE stands out in the UK energy sector as the first company to publish a just transition plan. And this is a direct result of investor engagement. And lastly, but perhaps most crucial, education on climate change and sustainable finance is key across our industry. We need to bridge the ESG knowledge gap. In our industry, we are spending a decent amount of time every year being trained on anti-money laundering and another very important compliance issues. I believe climate training should be mandatory and part of our compliance process. That's why we launched the Candriam Academy in 2017. It is a free access online training aiming at educating investors on ESG. And today, this free online training, we have around more than 6,000 members from 30 countries. Now, for my final section, I would like to conclude by saying that creating a green and inclusive society is a collective and a global responsibility. Everyone must be involved and committed. Europe might be leading the way with the Green Deal, regulations, and carbon pricing, but Europe is only 10% of the global CO2 emissions. We need to have the US and China on board. They represent more than 40% of the global emissions. Importantly, there is a growing momentum behind the just transition, with a number of global initiatives developing. The World Benchmarking Alliance, the Climate Action 100, the International Capital Market Association are all taking into account the just transition within their initiatives. And in the US, President Biden has stressed the importance of climate action with social inclusion. Lastly, I would like to share 4 ideas that I think could help us move forward faster. Rethink our approach on GDP, integrating extra financial risk at the level of government, extending our investment time horizon, and considering a long-term planification committee. So first, economic growth is widely viewed as the goal development objective for nations. But there is a growing disconnect between GDP and the well-being of society. Perhaps it's finally time to rethink this approach. GDP does not capture what we care about in an economy. To accurately measure the true standard of living, it should include levels of health, well-being, education, change inequality, and the state of the natural environment. Second, governments should also include extra financial risk similar to corporate in their reporting. And 3, we need to change the horizon of investment, of our thinking. It cannot be about chasing short-term returns only. We need to focus on long-term horizon. And 4, and this is my last position, we should create an unelected independent planification committee at the European or global level. The focus needs to be long-term to to tackle the big issues of our century. The solution I've outlined to you today will require large investments, and it has to be collective and an international effort, not just across governments, finance, public bodies, and corporations, but from all of us at our individual level. On that note, I would like to leave you with this quote from Helen Keller, one of our great humanitarians who, despite her own afflictions, dedicated her life to helping others. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. Thank you.